Hello everybody, hope you like the new coat of paint on the channel and hope you're not too angry about the name. But back to business, let's talk about Valerian. I've had my eye on Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets for a long time now. I'm a huge fan of science fiction in general, and I always keep my lookout for the possible sci-fi gems on the horizon. I've also been telling people since the first trailer came out to keep an eye on this movie, because it just seems something so intriguing. I mean, come on. Luc Besson doing a sci-fi space opera? Who doesn't need to see this? No joke, I'm such a dork, I wrote a paper about this movie. Yeah, I wrote my globalization paper for geography class about this. I think I got close to 100% on it. So that was nice. Shout out to Professor You're the best. But now that the second trailer is out, which is cut by an American studio and distributed by a company that isn't in bankruptcy, I think we can all safely agree that looks awesome. Yeah, it looks really cool. See, it's good when everybody agrees with me and likes the stuff that I like, right?
Welcome to Alpha. The city of 1,000 planets.
I'll be honest, I'm pretty scared for this movie. Not only is it distributed by a 3-year-old movie studio whose biggest financial success today is Bad Moms, but it is also the most expensive European movie ever made, which is based on a comic book that, while influential, is hardly popular or well-known outside of France. In fact, some of its moments have been borrowed so frequently by other science fiction series and movies that these days it may seem cliché. Godzilla Mendoza likes to call this the Halloween effect, where John Carpenter was so original and unique with the movie that it became unwatchable 20 years later after it was ripped off so many times that it became utterly generic. It's entirely possible that this will happen to Valerian. In other words, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets has two possible fates. It will either become John Carter, a high-budget box office bomb that really deserved better, or it'll be a Fifth Element, the rare exception of a European film crossing over to the mainstream American cultural landscape. Sorry, The Artist, and The Intouchables, and Amelie. You'll only be popular with cinephiles. Raise your hands if you've ever heard of the French comic book series Valerian and Laureline that this is based off of before you'd seen the movie trailer. If you had your hand up and you live in America, you're probably lying. Or not. How do I know if you're lying or not? This is me trying to make a joke, guys. I hope you appreciate my efforts. The point that I was trying to make is that Americans don't exactly know what this movie is about or what it's based off of before they go and see it, except for the trailers. So, armed with a couple of days of research, Googling, reading the comic books, and Wikipedia trolls, I'm here to give you a primer on Valerian and Laureline to get you all ready for the movie. Now, as you probably know, Valerian and Laureline is a French comic book series written and drawn by these people. I don't remember them, but I can put up their names. It's called Editing People. It's very helpful. It debuted in the early 60s and ran through the early 2000s. There are about 15-ish volumes that I could find online, and each of them are around 40 to 50 pages, so if you're really motivated, you can power through the whole thing in a weekend. It's actually pretty fun. Basically, the premise is that Valerian and Laureline are time agents in the 27th century who serve a future Earth in space. They travel through time, they travel through space, and they defeat various mad scientists, monsters, and alien races. The art is gorgeous, the writing is silly but fun, and honestly a little bit formulaic. Also, I just want to say that this part where they drew this mad scientist as Jerry Lewis from the Nutty Professor is my favorite part so far,
because it is the most French thing I have ever seen that does not involve baguettes, crepes, accordion music, or Paris. It's just so wonderful. This comic is so goofy. I love it.
From the limited issues I've read, Valerian and Laureline get captured and escape a lot. Like Batman the TV show from the 60s a lot. It isn't quite as silly, though. It's fun. I honestly like it. I had fun reading it. In the first issue, they traveled to 21st century New York in the middle of the end of the civilization as we know it. More like Trump's presidency, am I right? Ha 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 ha. Stereotypical Donald Trump joke complete. I'm sorry. Then they follow it up by a trip to a futuristic, vaguely Arabesque, stellar kingdom overtaken by a religion that's tearing down its scientific past. Yeah, the other thing that you should know about Valerian and Laureline is that it's very earnestly political. Much like some Star Trek episodes, it takes a very distinct political bent and argues very passionately for it. Like, one issue talks about environmentalism, another issue talks about science versus religion, another issue will talk about gender politics. And one thing that I'll say about the movie, going on a completely different tangent, is that the casting for Valerian is on point. Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne, save for the red hair on Delevingne's part, are exactly the same as their comic book counterparts. At least from the issues I've read, Valerian is hardly the roided-out, classically chiseled specimen we more commonly see in most superhero comics. This is something I rather like, and I'm glad the movie's staying faithful to the comic book. In specific, for the movie, what you need to know in terms of plot is that Luc Besson has been on record stating that the particular arc the film will be based off of is Ambassador of the Shadows. And no, it's not Empire of 1,000 Planets, but he was smart enough to steal that really cool title and repurpose it. Use what works, I guess. Ambassador of Shadows begins with our heroes escorting an Earth ambassador to Point Central, which is a cobbled-together space station that's been built over time piecemeal by all races all over the galaxy working together. Today, it serves as a gathering point for all the races to meet on neutral ground. So basically, imagine a space Switzerland, or the entire premise of that one 90s sci-fi TV show that nobody's watched except for me. See? Valerian's influences are everywhere. The Earth Ambassador basically wants to create a stellar empire with Earth at its head, and Valerian and Laureline don't exactly like this, but they don't really have much choice. He is their boss, after all. Before all of this is to take place, their ambassadorial procession is attacked and the ambassador is kidnapped. Valerian, having escaped the attackers, pursues and is subsequently captured. See what I told you, they're captured all the time. Then Laureline wakes from the attack using these weird cocoon gun things, and then follows in his trail. What follows is basically Laureline searching around all these weird science fiction-y areas of Point Central, trying to find where Valerian and the ambassador went. And a lot of this will have to be changed for the movie, because, for example, the setting is changed from Point Central to Alpha, and it's less of a diplomatic center and more of a gigantic metropolis in space station form. So it's less Geneva and more London, or like Hong Kong, or maybe New York would be appropriate reference. I'd say Paris, but not anymore. Whatever. Something vague is threatening this world, and it's up to our duo to stop them, or it, or whatever is fighting the world. Moving on. The other biggest change is in the point of view. As I mentioned earlier, in the comic, Valerian was captured by the mercenaries at the beginning of the story, and then held in a plot cul-de-sac, achieving wisdom, no, literally, until Laureline catches up with him. The movie looks to be a bit different, with the two going on a quest together to stop an unnamed threat. Now, that doesn't mean that they're taking entire sequences straight from the book, but they're still going to be changing some things as well. I'm not sure who the villain will be, honestly, because in the comic book, the people who kidnapped the ambassador were these weird dark-skinned aliens called Shadows. They were the people who originally built Point Central, and they didn't like the fact that Earth wanted to take control over everyone else. They saw that the Earthers wanted to be all-conquering and stuff, and they just decided to enlighten them. No, literally, they enlightened them in their temple and wisdom on their island of peace at the center of a giant space station. You can see them in the trailer, except that they're these weird pale Avatar rejects instead of weird dark-skinned Avatar rejects. Whitewashing? I call whitewashing? I'm assuming a similar speech to what the comic was will be given in the movie, although I'm guessing that the Shadows aren't going to be doing so hot, given that those explosions in the sky are a thing. To me, the trailer is really confusing, but also really intriguing, because it seems so very, very faithful to the comic book, but also completely different. You can see so much that I've just taken directly from the comic book, like this, and this, and this. They've even got the grumpy converter in there too. Get this, guys. It's a space hedgehog that shits money. Literally, that's what it is. But also, there's a lot of different stuff too. Like, in the comic book, there weren't any fighters doing fighting stuff, and there weren't as many spaceships blowing up. And what the heck is that product placement miniship doing there? That wasn't there either. Oh well, it's an international co-production, and Rihanna's outfits don't pay for themselves. Speaking of which, this movie has a pretty interesting cast, with American John Goodman, Brit Clive Owen, Ethan Hawke from Gattaca, and also boy band reject Chris Wu. Gotta love the hair. And Rihanna herself. I don't know about you, but I'm really excited for Rihanna's next film role following her star-making performance in Battleship. I'll bet you didn't even remember that movie exists. She's playing Bubble in this case, a weird shape-shifting entertainer, who in the movie is mostly changing outfits, like from this weird cabaret thing to a sexy nurse costume. But in the book, it's a little bit more extreme. I'm guessing, although I'm not sure, that she's one of the Sophuses. They're giant, genderless, amoeboid aliens who entertain people with sex. And Laureline pays for their assistance with aphrodisiac pills. So Rihanna is a genderless amoeba. Who knew? In the book, they take the form of these hunks here to entertain Laureline, so unless she's into girls, I'm guessing that Rihanna is putting on a show for Valerian. Now that's an example about how the movie is sort of expanding and tweaking things a little bit, which I think is cool. Keeps us on our toes. Those clothes transitions, though, they're really amazing. A great job on the special effects, whatever render farm in Canada or France or UK did that. I wonder if she'll become an amoeba and envelop Laureline inside her, and then become a second skin to disguise Valerian, like in the book. I'm looking forward to that. What? That's not weird. Well, okay, it is, but a guy can dream, right? I think what the second trailer is setting up more than anything else is the scope and the tone. It's selling us on an epic, swashbuckling science fiction adventure full of weird aliens, grand vistas, and space battles. And if you could ask me, that's what the first trailer failed to provide, honestly. The Beatles singing Because with all the enthusiasm of a funeral isn't exactly what I imagined to be the soundtrack to the space opera that I imagined in my head as a kid. I know we've all done that, right? But I was so excited about that but I was still excited about Valerian after that trailer. Maybe because I'm weird. I liked John Carter. I liked Tron Legacy. I have a sweet tooth for science fiction oddities that nobody else seems to like. I have a show about them. And ironically enough, I can't seem to like what is undisputedly the most iconic science fiction series ever made. Except for the first three, they were okay. I'm personally I love this. I'm really excited for this movie. From the cast of almost completely unknown actors who clearly can't afford personal trainers to the offbeat and endearing source material, there's a lot to like about Valerian, and there's a lot to like in the trailer. The color palette, the action, the excitement, it all just feels so fresh. It's something new and something different in an age of increasing homogenization in movies. It's certainly more exciting and different than Guardians of the Galaxy 2 or Star Wars 8. Gag. I'll see you next time, and don't forget to see this movie. Cautiously Realistic did not accept any form of payment for endorsing this movie except for the ad revenue that this video generates. If that's for Valerian, it's a complete coincidence, whatever, I'll buy.